afternoon and welcome to the final 2024 Pivotal Partners, a dynamic webinar focused on the real estate industry, both locally in Wisconsin and across the nation. I'm Hunter Kless-Weedle, and it's my privilege to be your moderator today. Today's discussion, we will dive into a 2024 recap and look what's ahead for us in 2025. To start us off, I'm going to pass it over to Anita to do some introductions.
Hi, my name's Anita Mohammed. I'm a CPA and tax partner at Whipley, specializing in the construction and real estate industry.
Carole.
Hi, I am Carole Schaeffer. I'm with JLA Architects with offices in Madison, Milwaukee, and Denver. And I am our Wisconsin Business Development Vice President and also our Municipal Entitlement Specialist.
Danielle.
Hi, I am the founder and owner of St. Ray Law, a small law firm outside of Madison. My focus is commercial real estate and land development. I have experience both in-house and in a solo law firm, and so enjoy working with small businesses and large corporations.
Thank you. Elise?
Hello, my name is Elise Smith-Back, and I'm First Vice President, Business Banking here at Park Bank in Madison. I have over 24 years of banking experience, and I finance commercial industry loans, commercial real estate loans, retail strip centers, apartment buildings, owner-occupied units.
Thank you. And finally, Heather.
Good morning. Heather Ewing, founder, CEO of Abstract Commercial Real Estate, also the founder of Pivotal Partners with this great group. We handle retail, leasing, sales, also with restaurants and mixed-use developments here in Dane County, specifically downtown Madison. I like to say that I'm homegrown, as I've lived here for over 40 years. So it's really connecting with various developers locally and outside of the state to bring creative opportunities to properties, investments, and the community.
Thank you all to our panelists for joining us today. Let's kick it off. We have a lot to share. So just to start, what were key trends that defined the real estate market in 2024? Heather, I'll pass this off to you.
Sure, definitely. Thank you. When it comes to retail and restaurants, it's interesting. You see some continuity of the earlier years, but then also really a focus on the experiential. So after COVID, when everything was pretty locked down, experiential rolled out, and that's something that is gaining momentum and speed here in the Madison market and also nationally. People are just really wanting to connect, foster communities. And I think one of the challenges in that has been that the office sector is down. With that, we've noticed a significant decline still for the lunch hour at our restaurants and related shopping. The dinner time is alive and well, and you're going to expect waits for that. But those are a couple of things that have definitely continued the influence. Additionally, everyone's busy. They want it quickly, they want it easily. So you'll see the curbside pickups, also the ordering online, adjustments online. And so there's still that hybrid model that's happening, and that's continuing to increase as we've progressed through the year. I would also say some of the important and defining factors have also been environmental. And with that, it's focusing on better manufacturing, building, and utilizing resources that we hadn't in the past.
Interesting. Anyone else have anything to add, key trends in your expertise?
I would piggyback on what Heather said about the sustainability, environmental considerations being more, as opposed to something that was a rarity in design, it is kind of expected that's going to be incorporated into the design. So we see that with a lot of our clients, just expecting that that'll be part of the equation. And so I've noticed that there is an uptick in that, which is, fantastic. I've also noticed that we've had over 2024, I would say, is a lot of like driving with a student driver where it stops and starts, so it'll be like, go, 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 and then pause because of some of the uncertainty. So we've had a lot of kicking the tires, if you will, around the entitlement work, trying to find out what we could fit on a site or what it would take to get something approved given existing or potential zoning. So a lot of exploration, but then some pausing. I'm excited that some of those are starting to pick back up. But yeah, I would say a lot of stop starts and exploration has been a defining trend in 2024.
I would also piggyback on the stop starting as well. I think with interest rates and in my world, they made things a lot harder to pencil out. So people were having to bring more cash to the table, or just waiting to do their project because the rates were just not at a point where they were willing to pay for the project. It was more beneficial to throw them money into a money market account than put it into a project. So I do see the light at the end of the tunnel though, with the rates starting to come down, but definitely some pause for the 2024 year.
I don't want to jump ahead too far into 2025, but Heather, when do you expect the office to start to pick back up and seeing more people downtown during lunchtime and maybe veering away from the curbside pickup?
I think the curbside pickup is going to remain and continue strong. The reason for that is that people are still very busy, whether it's career related, personal, things of that nature. And I think convenience, we're willing to pay for it, right? I know myself, Instacart, I love Instacart. Why go through all the aisles when I can just go online and order my groceries? They're delivered, they go into the fridge, right? So convenience, I think, is definitely going to stay there. But as far as the question with the office sector, I anticipate that there's going to come the break point of the investments where a lot of the landlords, I think, have had the reserves. They've been wise with their money over the years, and that's starting to shift and change. I think that's when you're going to see more enforcement on having people come into the office physically. I also think certain arenas really do need the collaboration, especially the creative arenas, to collaborate, gain new ideas, envision new types of products and bring that to fruition. So I think factors like that are really going to matter. I see it also as, if you want to say, you have to pay to play, right? With commission sales, if you don't deliver, you have to go get a 9 to 5. I envision something similar to that in the office arena, where if you're hitting your metrics, doing everything, maybe you will have the opportunity to work from home. And those that are outside of that aren't able to be disciplined or whatever it might be, are going to have to come into the office. But in general, there will be a shift for that. I firmly believe that. So I think that will definitely help. And also it's just going to buoy everything because it's a chain reaction. And when people aren't eating out, restaurants are slower, they're going to smaller footprints so that they don't have to deal with both employees not showing up, employees quitting, and also the slower lunch periods and things of that nature. So it really does ripple through in very significant ways.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll go to the next one. What regions or cities have experienced the most growth in real estate sales or value? Were there noticeable trends that any of you saw within Madison or nationally?
I'll jump in. So when you look at Dane County, the west side has had the most significant amount of leased properties. And next in line then is downtown. And of course, that's the one near and dear to my heart. But with that, we're noticing that the vacancy trends are continuing to decline. There was a significant boost in leasing at the new Olive Madison, one of the new high rises by Core Spaces. A lot of that was attributed to one user coming in and leasing approximately 23,000 plus square feet out of Iowa. And for Madison, that's a big number, especially with retail and restaurants. If you think about it, a lot of retail is somewhere in the 1,500, 2,500. And if you're looking at a full service restaurant, typically it's about a 6,000 square foot footprint. So it was several leases that tied into that all through one operator out of Iowa that has multiple locations. So the downtown continues to grow. There's different offerings that are advantageous for both landlords and tenants. And it's really, as we know, it's looking at the full picture. It's not just the lease rate. You have to factor in all the other details of the TI, any other grants, funding, and where they're going to be able to maximize their footprint for their demographic.
Has new construction or redevelopment played in these changes? This might be more so for Carol or Elise on your side, if you're seeing any new construction being talked about next year with rates coming down.
Go back to kind of what I was mentioning before with a lot of, I mean, there's a lot that's in the potential pipeline. I mean, next year could be exponentially busy if a lot of these projects hit the gas. Now, we, really have a large portfolio in the multifamily and mixed use arena, and that is a market that, just given the need for it, particularly in Dane County, we saw the housing study that came out that said, we're going to need 7,000 new households or new units, both single family and multifamily over the next at least 10 years, just to keep up with population growth. So we know that it's going to continue to be a strong market. So we get a lot of calls. And one thing I'll say that across this year and going into next year, we're getting a lot more inquiries and folks coming in that are outside of Madison. I mean, I've been in the industry for almost 20 years. When I first started, the Madison development community consisted pretty much of homegrown developers, some rare outside investment. And over the last 20 years, I've seen that shift dramatically. I mean, we're blessed to have the Grass Camp School here, so we have a lot of developers that get churned out and stay. But we are getting a lot more folks from out of town that are either investment groups or developers, particularly in the multifamily space, that are looking at opportunities with for example, the city of Madison has done proactive rezoning in a number of different areas of the city that, are upzoning some areas that developers are from outside of just Madison are interested in. So that's been a shift that's continued to pick up in the last year, building on past years of that shift. And I think we'll continue to see that in 2025.
Where are these outside investors coming from?
Name it. Within, I would say we've got, folks that are based out of Indiana, Iowa, Chicago, Minnesota are some. So it really.
California and Chicago. I mean, what you notice too is you'll notice that the homegrown developers, I always said it was kind of like everyone had their turf. And you notice now too of like there's a little more blending of that, where I think people have to sharpen the pencils. But that's where you'll see too the out-of-state developers such as Mortensen, right? They were awarded for the parking ramp on Lake Street and State. So that's a big one, but they'd already been approved on the East Wilson project. So you'll notice that they're doubling up once they find the formula, that they then come in, rinse and repeat. Obviously, we all know what Core Spaces has done with the hub originally in 17 to the James to Olive. And now they've got another one or two in the pipeline on adjacent blocks. So to your point, it's certain ones do it very well. And if you don't have that level of proficiency in working locally, that people just aren't going to get into the market. And that's why I know Carol gets a lot of calls. I get a lot of calls. And interestingly, people always want to know the deal terms, but that doesn't happen unless you're a client.
So I'm going to pass it off to you to speak more on the interest rate movements, both effects of this year and what you're expecting.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been waiting for the interest rates to decrease since, the beginning, late last year, beginning of this year. It was a tough first 6 months of the year with the rates where they were, and having to talk through how to get things done, having to talk through loan renewals that were coming up, and making sense of going from a 4% rate to an 8% rate, right? So Fed has cut 75 basis points. They're going to meet in 2 weeks, I think 17th or 18th. And it's projected another quarter point. But what's interesting is on the mortgage side, the consumer mortgage side, rates kind of fell. I think it was more anticipation of rates dropping. But then a couple weeks ago, they kind of inched back up again. So we'll see how that kind of affects the consumer mortgage world. But on the commercial side, our rates tend to fall in line with how the Fed is moving rates. So I think it's giving people some hope for the following year. I have had people talking about projects again. I am reaching out to those who maybe paused on things last year. But I think there's going to be some relief in the next coming year. I don't know if it'll be as quick as we originally thought, but I do sense that relief is coming. So it'll affect borrowers and savers though too. I think for the last year, people with money in the bank really enjoyed earning 4 or 5% on their funds. And with interest rate reduction, that means you're not going to be earning those high dollars on those savings accounts as well. So
Outside of rates, is there anything else that it's gonna take for people who want to start these projects to really hit the gas pedal and go forward with them?
well, I think the same construction costs. I think those are always going to be a factor. So, you know, what those are going to do in the new year, I don't know. But it seems like people have been they've been pretty steady in what I have seen. So if we can keep those costs under control, I think that'll be good for the new year. The other thing that I've noticed is really in the Dane County area, that's where our bank focuses, is our existing properties, our existing commercial real estate. Their values have not decreased, right? So as these interest rates were increasing, people were not lowering their prices on their commercial real estate to account for that. The values were remaining strong, and people were still paying these prices for commercial real estate. So I do think commercial real estate does hold its value in Dane County, and I do think it's a good investment.
I'll jump in on that also of, you know, in talking with a lot of the landlords, they've definitely been hit by the insurance, right? Of doubling,
Oh, yes.
rates being doubled, and that's been a big sore point. But to tie in with what you're saying, Elise, is, for example, with lease rates, when you look at Madison in general, the rates went up by $1, which is
Mhm.
not a significant amount, but it's trending up. And of course, that's where in the downtown you do have the largest rates and the most costly for that. But
Mhm.
it's a great market. The landlords I've represented, I mean, if anything, I've gotten above market averages, and you know, it makes them happy and it brings returning clients. But the market is definitely doing well from the retail restaurant perspective. And I think a lot of that too is having the street knowledge, and also several years, you know, beyond a decade of knowing how things have trended, what the attributes are, because it helps you to sell a property. And I think that's where too, when you look at the developments in the downtown, specifically the downtown, we have almost 70 in various stages of planning, development, construction. So that's huge. And I've joked that the large bird in the sky is our crane. So you'll see various cranes, and I think that's also creating a lot of interest. I've noticed through LinkedIn and different online channels for investing in Madison.
Like, and people that are gonna, if you can hit that sweet spot when you've already done your preparation. So you've gone out, you know, we were working with a group that is looking at a site and then are like, oh gosh, we talked to DNR and there's, you know, more considerations, or we talked to the city and that particular approval process is going to take at least this long. So if you have those things like set early and you're ready to go when the interest rates do come down before the construction cost, like let's say that we have, you know, the rates come down and, you know, you're getting that perfect storm. If you're starting at that point to get your project ready to go, you might be kind of left with like having more considerations as construction costs will go up if the number of projects go up and they can, you know, there's that competition for the workers. So I think there'll be kind of that sweet spot. If you're ready to go, the rates come down, you can hit the ground running.
Would
Be ready
echo
your
that just from Carole, your entitlement process, exactly, just the process that or timeline that can take to go through. It's best to really get moving and have you take people through that process early on to really get a feel for support for the project, so that when you get those rates, they can you can lock in. That's another thing, is sometimes people are losing out because some of the entitlement processes are taking a very long time and they're losing out on good opportunities from a financing perspective.
And what's interesting too is that certain owners are not tying up their land. You know, they've said thanks, no thanks to the 18 plus, you know, month type of due diligence. And also too, of really increasing the amount of earnest money that needs to be put down, all of the option periods, non-refundable. It's hard. You know, people are having to pay to do their due diligence. It's not, you know, the kind of the easy flow that we had years ago, where a seller would just be happy that someone's interested and wants to tie up the land. So it's a different scenario now.
Not just in Madison, but in other communities. I talk about the process before the process. where, you don't just walk in and submit a land use plan. There's a lot of legwork you have to do in terms of notifications or engaging with neighborhoods or engaging with the community and stakeholders, and then getting all of your, getting your plan sets, getting things ready before you can even submit. Because then once you start into the process, that's a whole different thing, but getting ready for that. And then the process after the process, once you get your approvals, you still have to get your sign offs. And frequently in communities, you've got conditions of approval that you have to meet. And those it's not a gimme. You have to, and it doesn't happen really quickly. And the agencies have to sign off on it. That takes time. So I always tell people, make sure you're budgeting for the actual approval timeline, but then the process before and the process after, to make sure your project goes as smoothly as possible without hiccups that can cost you dearly if you don't hit your, when you have to put a shovel in the ground in order to bring that product to market in a timely manner. So,
And the holidays slow things down.
yeah,
That is true.
Speaking of hiccups, have any of you experienced any unforeseen project hurdles this year that you were not expecting when we had the first pivotal partners in the beginning of the year? Everything went smoothly.
I'll give one example just to kick it off. I think just from communities that, if you're looking at communities that are surrounding Dane County, I probably represent more clients that are outside of Madison. And I would say communities really are interested in growth, and they talk about growth, I think, until it's time to grow. Because then I think everyone gets really fearful of growth and the process, just going to the entitlements in general. I think they all are for more housing. They want this to happen, but once they start getting presented with certain plans of, this is going to be a high rise or multi-story, multi-family building, and this is going to be right when, in different locations, whether it's in Oregon or a Stoughton or Wanakee, anywhere that in the surrounding areas, not maybe Wanakee so much, but they get a little nervous when they're considered small community, but yet growth is natural and they want to build the schools. I think that I ran into maybe some more hurdles of just uncertainty on how they wanted to grow, yet they knew they should grow.
Do you find too, Daniel, coming from the legal side of things, I've run into the surrounding communities where they want growth, and you might even have the community on board with the growth, but there isn't the actual mechanism for the type of development they want to do. Like, for example, we had a project that wanted to move forward, but we would have had to do a comp plan amendment in order to do that, which is a different process than just going through the approvals. So I think one of the things is that it's more difficult for smaller communities to stay ahead of kind of that, what they need in their zoning curve. And you can't just, like, we don't have a mixed use zoning category, for example, so if someone wants to come in and do a mixed use project, there literally is no way for that to get done. And so I've run into that where there's like, we really want this, but we have to sort out how we have to change the zoning code, or how we have to change the comp plan, or how we have to modify things in order to accommodate the type of growth they actually want.
Mm-hmm. And I think even going through, and I had to go through all of that and amending comp plans and going through all of the zoning, and then they're realizing maybe they want to change all their zoning ordinances while you're doing your project. So then you don't necessarily comply with what their zoning codes are. And that's making it difficult to actually get plats through and approved, because they're in the process of also changing all their zoning to adapt for the growth, or say no to any more planned development. They don't want that. They want to have more defined areas. Well, then that changes your whole process in terms of how you might have your development plan laid out in the development agreement even. So yeah, I've been noticing it becomes a little more onerous to go through the whole process, because I still think even after they do that, there's just a control mechanism that they want to maintain and hold on to for a little longer.
Interesting experience with an operator, and it's neat. It's new to the market, and things aren't fully buttoned up yet, so I'll keep the name out of it. But it was neat. They've done a lot of international exploration to really create something that will be one of a kind here for the Madison market. And with that leads to apprehension sometimes by different landlords for the different power requirements, plumbing, things of that nature. And this is typical of Madison. It's been this way as long as I remember, but this really throws people that are newer to the Madison market, because landlords typically, if they don't want to lease to someone, they won't. Or if it's something new, for example, when we were earlier looking for sites, the landlord decided, you know what, I don't want to spend that much TI. I'm just going to put a restaurant in. If I just don't want any other use than a restaurant. which are typically one of the largest possible TI amounts that are given. But there can be apprehension depending on when something's new to the market. So I'd say apprehension is one. Another thing too was, and I won't mention where in the chain, but a person had sold their business. So then that rippled through to the tenant that I'm representing. And so that also is something very unexpected, where you have everything and then suddenly it's like it's a whole new game. So it's understanding what can be done with them, what can't be done with them, and just really negotiating something favorable for all parties. And that's where Madison is community. You always want to treat people well and also create a harmonious end result for everyone. But I always say too, with Madison, it's small, it's not New York. So for people coming into town, mind your P's and Q's.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. Anita, could you share with us how tax law changes this year have changed things for us and what you expect going forward?
I
Sure.
know you talked before about things that we didn't foresee in the first quarterly meeting that we had this year. When we were talking back then, the House was about to pass a bill, and they did end up passing it at the end of January. And so we thought, with all this bipartisan support, we'd have this new extender package just rolling through that would accelerate some deductions for real estate owners. But that stalled and created quite a bit of uncertainty through a good part of the year. So that bill would have retroactively changed the tax law to reinstate 100% bonus depreciation, which, real estate investors have quite a bit of that. It would have also expanded the ability to deduct interest expense faster. And so just not knowing what was going to happen with the tax law delayed tax filings and just really created a lot of lack of ability to plan for the future and for cash flow for a good part of 2024. So that was unfortunate. That bill never did pass the Senate. It just completely stalled. So we wrapped up our filings and then had to await the election as well, right? So now we're on the other side of the November elections. We know that the Republicans won the House, Senate, and presidential election. And so now we're looking again to, okay, are these 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions going to get extended, which would be amazing news for the real estate industry. So that's the forward looking. We're in the middle of tax planning for year end right now. And so we do need to keep in mind what the laws are now, what we know, but it looks promising that some of these provisions, the lower tax rates, deducting faster, could get extended, which is really good news. And just say one other thing from not a tax perspective necessarily, but from a regulation perspective, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network implemented a new beneficial ownership reporting requirement. That's going to affect a lot of businesses, and a lot of people still don't know about this requirement, but the most initial reports are due January 1st, 2025. So you've got real estate investors that might have multiple LLCs. They could potentially be looking at numerous filings. And if you file late, I think the penalty is like a $500 a day penalty. So it's not something you want to mess around with. So any business, I think most CPA firms cannot prepare them because there are a lot of legal determinations in them, but definitely take a look at those. I know a lot of the clients that I work with have been able to complete them themselves online and sometimes have consulted their attorneys. So lots of, I guess, ups and downs and unknowns this year. And so it's been interesting.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise. I thought that they sent around. I learned about that not too long ago.
I think it's $591 per day, criminal fines up to $10,000, and potential imprisonment up to 2 years.
But we all just learned about it maybe within a month and a half of year.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a great way to build up a kitty.
Yeah. Anything else on the legal governmental regulation side that's happened this year that anyone wants to, shifting gears into AI, which has become such a hot topic this year. How have you seen it shape your world this year?
Well, I think I see it rolling out with architects, which Carol could, jump in on, but I think also of utilizing it for various frameworks. I think data gathering, of course, the big national and international firms, I think a lot of it is utilized for marketing, for sales, lead generation, things of that nature. I know I do a lot of cold calling still to this day, and I get a lot of messages. And right now you can typically tell if it's not a real voice, but with all of the plans that they have for it, I'm sure it's only a matter of time before you can't really discern if it's a bot or if it's someone real. So I think it's like anything, change can be difficult, but I also see the virtues in it. So I think it's a really useful tool that people are going to have to accept and find a way to play nice with it in the sandbox if they're not an early adopter. But for me, anything that you can utilize that's going to help benefit your clients and the industry, I think it's great.
Going to come at it just from a banking perspective. It hasn't really touched my day-to-day too much in the commercial real estate world, but I would say on a level of just banking, fraud is increasing daily, and we are seeing AI do things to help with that, whether it's voice AI or emails, just random things that we are tightening up our procedures and our policies here at the bank, just because there are some ways people are using AI to commit fraud, unfortunately.
I would just piggyback on what you're saying too. Oh, sorry. Just what Elisa's saying, exactly where I would head with the AI is just looking at ways to be protective and using it correctly in a smart way, but making sure that you're aware of the risks that are there. And just people are implementing a lot more of that into agreements and contracts for added protections.
It's something at our firm we've been really exploring, like what's the best way to incorporate it into the architectural world, without it's just one of those, it's fairly, think about 5 years ago, you never talked about it. And now it's at the forefront of pretty much every conference you go to, every conversation, like when you're talking about the future of it and how it's going to impact your firm. So I know it's absolutely something that our, group is looking at and figuring out how to incorporate it into our practices. It doesn't impact me as much in terms of doing business development, which is really a personal relationship management role, as well as maybe I have talked with some folks about, would there be a way to incorporate that into municipal software that would speed up the sign-off process? So we've talked about that, so I think there's so many opportunities for it. It's certainly part of the discussion. I was at a conference in San Antonio where they were talking about how facilities can incorporate it primarily because of the workforce, in terms of what our workforce is looking like going forward. And now given, what the discussion is, what could happen after the new administration comes in, what might happen to our workforce. And so incorporating AI in ways, because you're not going to have the folks to replace the outgoing facilities people. So how do you utilize that? And it's kind of like anything with data, garbage in, garbage out. So how do you harness the power of it without, and make it actually useful? So I think it's a really exciting thing because to both Elise and Danielle's comments, you have to be careful with as well, just because of the opportunities for exploitation or fraud.
We're about halfway there, so let's shift gears and start talking about more what we're looking ahead into for 2025. What are primary factors expected to influence the real estate market in 2025? Very broad. Let's talk about everything.
Exactly. I would say in real estate specifically, from a brokerage aspect, that there will be additional integration of order fulfillment. And we saw little glimpses of this during the COVID timeframe of having the retail shopping on one side and then also the fulfillment on the other, which was pretty handy. So I see more of that. And again, it really lends itself to convenience, people being tight on time. And also, I think people are taking a step back and really determining how they want to live their lives and where they want to devote their time, energy, and resources. So I envision more of that, the hybrid stores, and then also additional growth. So what I've noticed in the past year, which I think will extend into 2025 as well, is really greater density also in the suburban markets. People do like that safe distance, if you want to say, from the downtown, especially when they have families and kids. And with that, wanting all of the modern conveniences, the places to shop and the restaurants to eat in, the coffee shops. But I think with that too, the outdoor shopping experience and really amplifying again the experiential. So there's going to be a lot of trends that continue. I would say it's that they're gaining momentum and will show up in a larger way. When you think too about it, for example, the old Shopco on Mineral Point Road, you see the big boxes that go out. In came Crunch Fitness, so new to the market. And we know that Madison loves being active. So things of that nature will continue seeing that. I think also you'll see some of the transition, and Carole, I know you had mentioned this in one of our earlier pivotal partners of the Radisson shifting into apartments and things like that. They still have the restaurant, but the shift to housing. And I think you'll see that in some, but a lot of times the structure, it just won't allow for it. Sometimes it does line up, but I think a lot of times it doesn't. So it's not going to be cost effective, where I'm actually picturing, who knows, right? But what I'm picturing is, why not have commercial condos? There's such a push towards entrepreneurialism. Why not have more commercial condos, have those different entrepreneurs beginning their firms? They can, take advantage of the tax breaks that come with that, and then have a restaurant, a coffee, some of these different retailers, food, and maybe just some basic office as well. So I think a little bit more creativity and less cookie cutter with those different orientations. So I think those will be neat. And I think too, there's just going to be more and more strategy of utilizing the green and making things more energy efficient, reducing the footprints for affordability, but also creating more communities. So really an amplification, I would say, of 2024.
To that point, I do have in new developments that one of the requests we are getting more and more is, especially if there's affordable housing as a component, but in general, what other services are going to be made available? What other things are going to be as a part of so in a mixed use, or if we're going to put this together, like think about what that, even if it's just straight multifamily, what other things are you going to make available so that this project can thrive and succeed and not, have some of the challenges associated with if you just put an isolated housing project in the middle of nowhere without, transportation or, community services, that sort of thing. So that's been a more frequent question asked right out of the gates. The other thing, when you were referring to the conversions that in a couple of different instances we ran into here, there were the kind of unforeseen, oh gosh, this is going from a commercial to a residential use, or this is going from this use to that use. And so there were things like, oh, the plumbing isn't going to support it, or legislatively you have to have all of these rooms individually metered now because they're apartments and not a hotel, so it's treated differently under the law in terms of what they're required to do. So that created additional expenses and time. So I think, and you mentioned commercial condos, but there's also a push for owner occupied condos in more dense spaces. And one of the issues is some of the liability issues. So like, I think you may see some legislation coming through the state that's going to address some of those conversion challenges and the ability to create what we want in the market. So I foresee some of that. I know there's already discussions of it for the next legislative session. So I think that is not, because some of those are statewide issues, not specific to the city of Madison. So I think they're looking at how do we make it easier, even if you take the structural considerations out, to actually do these conversions and make them successful, whether they be commercial or multifamily. So,
well, and that's where, to your point, like frequently stairwells are a limiting factor in the developments. And so with that too, it's density, right? And in certain areas you can have density. And as you get into the suburban areas, that's more of a challenge also. So it's a multi-factored approach, but I agree. I think creativity solves a lot of problems, and it's really asking the empowering questions of what can we do to move this forward or add some of the different services and experiences for people.
I think you're absolutely right too. I think you guys are saying you have to think about the services, because you can't just go with the mentality, if we build, they will come anymore. I think people look a little bit more forward thinking as to what's around them. People enjoy walking a little bit more, working from home a little bit more. You think about what's around you at home versus or your workspace versus maybe as much as you did if you were downtown. And I think that is a fun part and a challenging part all at the same time, because you have to plan so much at the same time. But it is very exciting, and I think I've seen a lot more too of the, I guess, unique getting creative, where people want to figure out how they can collaborate together with offices, or how does my business support your business? And I'm seeing that a little bit more, where people are looking at larger spaces and doing that collaboration of sharing their conference room, but just their businesses complement each other really nicely. And I have seen more of that. And I think that's kind of fun as well.
Well, and that's where too, seeing ice skating rinks in shopping centers, right? Bowling alleys, all of these different things. I mean, one has a baseball diamond. That would never have happened 10 years ago. So I think anything community related, it seems to be winning.
We worked on the baseball commons in Franklin, and it's got kind of that, athletic space. It's got the multifamily space, and it's got different things. And we did the Black Business Hub here in Madison, which has a lot of, you've got the DOT, but then you've also got, coffee shop and a number of different economic development associations and the Urban League. So you've got just this, as the name would imply, a hub of all of these very complementary things, but then not just, in terms of offices, but then you have there's like a hair salon school, or a barbershop school, there's a wine and donuts. It's something really amazing like that, but really cool ways to bring people together, whether whatever their interest may be. So it's fun to see those kind of developments happening.
Great. What should buyers, sellers, and investors prioritize for 2025?
Say a lot of it depends on their goals. I mean, where they're at, where they want to be. So I don't think there's a blanketed statement. I mean, if you think about it too, some people that had the resources, even though the interest rates were high, bought, because then you have market share. And once the rates drop, good luck getting in, right? So it's kind of like Carole was mentioning about the pre-due diligence of doing things a little bit differently. So I think it all comes down to what people are looking to do. And that's also going to guide you whether you buy or sell, or versus leasing. Also, is it downtown? Is it one of the suburbs? So it's all guided off of that. And in the downtown, we notice we don't have always the largest returns, but you've got tremendous stability, which was proven through COVID and things like that. And I think it's really all dependent on goals and their current standing.
I would echo what Heather said. I would say, and maybe plan out your year and get people on board that you're going to need to fulfill your goals. So I'm looking at 6 people right here that can help people fulfill those goals.
I agree with the planning part, because if you're looking at your plan for your portfolio, doing a 1031 isn't always super quick as it used to be. So it is a lot of planning to be able to flip those properties and take advantage. I just know a few clients that are working through those, and the timing gets really tight in terms of getting everything in order. So the solid planning is really important.
From a tax perspective, with Anita, such uncertainty, where it's going to go, what can people do to prepare and prioritize and plan for what to come?
You've always got to plan based on what the law is now, because that's what we know. But Trump has advertised what he would like to see happen, and there's a good list of what very much could happen in the coming year. So just having that backup analysis on, okay, well, if this gets enacted, this is what this looks like. And just having that ready to go can give you a head start.
Anything else anyone wants to
All right.
add as we wrap up today's webinar?
2024 has been a great year.
5 is going to be even better. 2025.
Every year is better.
There we go. Right. Well, thank you all
right.
for your time today, and we'll call it for the year, and we look forward to seeing everyone in 2025. So be on the lookout for next webinar and exciting new topics in the coming year.
Thank you.
Well, bye.